Welcome to Cult Pop. Today we've got a very special episode for you. We're going to have another old friend of the show on, Tobias Buckell, and Tobias has got a new novel out and he's got a lot to tell us about the novel and some of the things he's going to be working on in the future. Also, we're really proud to have Nick Sagan. The name might be familiar to you, and it might be because he's the son of Carl Sagan, but Nick has cut out his own path and it's quite a remarkable one. He's done a lot of writing for television, and he's also put out 3 fabulous novels that we absolutely love, and I think you're going to love too. So stay tuned for Cult Pop.
A message for people with diabetes. Diabetic neuropathy can cause stinging, burning, tingling, pain, numbness, or weakness in your feet and hands. But there is help. Call the American Diabetes Association at 1-800-DIABETES or visit diabetes.org.
I'm at the 2007 Penguicon with one of our favorite authors, Tobias Buckell. Tobias, thanks for taking time to be with us again.
Hey, thanks for having me here.
Absolutely loved your first novel, Crystal Rain.
Thank you.
And now we've got you here today because in a month or so, Ragamuffin's coming out.
Yep.
You got me an advanced copy. Absolutely fantastic. I just loved Ragamuffin. Let's run the gamut. Let's start off with Crystal Rain. People who haven't seen you in previous episodes of Cult Pop might be wondering, okay, what's Crystal Rain about? Tell us a little bit about that book and the universe that you started to create with Crystal Rain.
Sure. Crystal Rain was my far future Caribbean steampunk novel. I'm originally from the Caribbean, of course, and what I really wanted to do was write the sort of a lost colony novel. I really enjoy those, where a world has been settled by a group of people with customs and traditions, and they've lost contact with the world from which they came from, and they've continued to develop off on their own. And I, used Caribbean background and culture for the starting point, and posited that they were on a world that had been cut off from a wormhole, and they develop on their own. And the novel is just about them beginning to, some of the characters who come from the previous Exodus, touching down and beginning to re-experience that culture and deal with it, as well as the fact that they're Aztecs who are about to invade over a mountain chain. So just because it's a pulp adventurous novel, we've got to have a great starting threat. I loved the
pulp feel of it. The pulp it's going Edgar Rice Burroughs feel, the pulp type of
I get the Burroughs comparison a lot. People really, they seem to like that.
What I like though is about a half or a third or 2/3 of the way through the book, things suddenly change and a much bigger picture comes into view.
Well, that's the fun, that big picture of, there being other worlds out there, alien threats and a grand scheme. I love the sort of sense of wonder, that gosh wow moment that really kind of opens people up. And it was a lot of fun to kind of finish out Crystal Rain with those bits, to go from a very sort of steampunk historical setting with brass dials and airships and that retro technology that's so cool, and then to bring it all the way up by the end where you're dealing with things of a more galactic threat nature, with this background, this setting of the steampunk still.
And the cover, the eye-catching cover of that Crystal Rain, that's how there was a review in Sci-Fi or some magazine. I said, that really looks like something I want to pick up. And that cover was displayed prominently at the bookstore I went to, and it just sold the book like that. Absolutely beautiful cover, and it really does. A big pirate. And
incredible job by Todd Lockwood. He really did me good. And thanks to Irene Gallo, the art director, and my editor Paul Stevens, all kind of conspired to get this great cover. So that was just a great moment as a first-time writer when I saw that cover for the first time.
I was just proud.
Like, oh, that's just perfect.
Now, great news about folks at home who may not have been able to grab a hardcover, didn't see the book out. A mass market paperback edition is coming out here real soon.
Yeah, we're launching that in about 4 or 5 weeks. It's going to be out in late May, but the way they ship and whatnot, it could be in bookstores as early as middle May. So, start looking for that in middle of May.
Okay, fantastic. Now let's bring it up to your newest novel, Ragamuffin. Absolutely fantastic. Set in the same universe, but a standalone novel. With many beloved characters from Crystal Rain returning, but this is a standalone novel that really ratchets the action up a bit.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun, again, with the big concepts. The Caribbean steampunk, and now we have Caribbean space opera with grand space battles and malevolent aliens lurking behind everyone, controlling them like puppets. And Just this great big scheme of wormholes collecting all these worlds and, giving me just a large playground to sort of let these characters roam out and explore. And certainly just had a blast with that, with Ragamuffin.
Tobias, I was really impressed with your different view in this novel. A lot of sci-fi. The humans rule the universe, and we go gallivanting across the universe, and we rule the universe, and what we say goes. This is not the case. In Ragamuffin, humans have a very low standing.
Yeah.
And in the start of the novel, I absolutely loved it. Nishara, the protagonist, is trying to get off a planet and seeing all the horrors of what humanity is going through. Tell us a little bit about your take on where humanity stands in the whole galactic ladder.
Well, I grew up in a third world country. I grew up in the Caribbean, and certainly these countries didn't necessarily have all the power. They weren't top of the food chain. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's actually interesting because I still think that they play an important role, a proud role, and a great role in the world. And so I wanted to sort of portray something like that, where humans are always on top, and I wanted to really kind of invert that and play with it a little bit. And in this novel, human beings are more kind of like, they live on reservations, they're confined, they're not top dogs, they kind of skulk around the edges, they're allowed to exist in sort of free zones, but there are definitely lots of aliens-only areas where humans aren't allowed. And they're pretty low on the totem pole. And I thought that was really intriguing because it gives the characters a lot to fight against throughout the whole book. You said early on, one of the huge obstacles is our character has to figure out how to get off-world because that's just a tough thing, Lots of books, like people just kind of hop in a spaceship and fly around everywhere. Yeah. Well, just getting from one part of the world to another is a big deal because she has to have the proper authorization from aliens just to move from one part to another.
Yes, and I really, really like that here we're struggling a little bit on certain planets, other planets, and just the rumors. And just, well, we hear things might be better upstream a little bit. Get through this wormhole, maybe things are better. And then the truth is that she has the ability, she's carrying something inside her that may be the secret to humans really jumping up a notch.
She has a heck of a weapon, and there are a lot of people who would like to kill her to, nullify that threat. So,
without saying too much, when I'm talking about novels, I don't like to start saying too much. Tell us a little bit more about the novel, and then we're going to discuss some future projects and some other things. But tell us some more about what else they can expect.
You look at the cover, and obviously with the fact that it's a good-looking woman with a really large minigun blasting her way down the middle of a
fantastic
spaceship
visual in that,
or a space colony. That there's going to be lots of action and adventure. I always deliver on that. But for me, this novel was about her trying to find home. Her whole mission is to try and find a place. And the place she's looking for happens to be the home world that's in Crystal Rain, and family and people because she's cast out and alone. And so I was exploring the different kinds of families and relationships that we acquire. Some people are related by blood in this book, and we acquire that family connection. And some people are basically adopted, and some people are just really close friends who kind of get folded into that family. And it's about family and home in an odd sort of pulp adventure way. This band of unlikely people, and humanity itself is a band that has to kind of figure out where it's going and how to band together and become whole.
Well, I was really pleased, Toby, with how well I just like the book as a standalone book. And we said that earlier, that it gets very frustrating when you go to a bookstore, you find books, and you can't find the first one. You don't need to read Crystal Rain. I recommend you get it. I recommend you get the paperback. But if you just see Ragamuffin, pick it up. It's a great standalone book, and then you can just backtrack to Crystal.
Well, yeah, first and foremost, I'm a reader, and there's nothing I hate more than, as a reader, going to a bookstore and seeing a book that looks really intriguing and seeing book 2 of on it and thinking, wow, that's really annoying. And it's even worse if you can't even find book 1, right? It's like, okay, maybe I would even buy book 1 to buy this book 2, but I can't even find book 1. So I hate that. So as a reader, when I sat down to plot this novel out, I said, I really want to deliver something that anyone can read regardless of whether they read Crystal Rain. And a lot of people have been telling me that, sounds like I delivered.
Oh, I think you did a great job. And I also think for the Crystal Rain lovers, absolutely, we revisit some favorite characters. But it's just a great job. You're doing a great job of building this universe and continuing on in the next step. So taking it now, we've talked off camera, you're working on the third novel in this same universe.
Yeah. Third novel is turning out to be a huge amount of fun. I'm about a third of the way through. And that'll be coming out, next year in 2008, same time, summer 2008. And this is a lot of fun. I went to a lot of these, I went to a few lectures by Jeff Landis. And one of the things he did was he talks about, in Venus, the atmosphere is so dense that air actually has lifting ability, not quite as much as like helium, but it has definite lifting properties. And Jeff theorized that if, did the math actually, because he's a NASA physicist, I'm kind of an idiot, but he figured out that if you take like a kilometer-wide sphere or building structure and just filled it with regular breathable air that you'd have to have people in it, it floats in a Venusian atmosphere. So I took a Venusian-like planet and put it in my third book. It's not Venus, but it's a Venus-like planet. And I thought, this is great because you basically have a scientific justification for Cloud City.
Cool.
From like Star
Very
Wars,
cool,
right?
Sure.
There's no hand waving or magical anti-gravity devices strapped to the bottom. It sucker just floats.
It's a big bubble
it's
floating.
It's just a big bubble
in the
floating.
atmosphere.
It's great, So I thought this is wonderful. So I thought that would make a great background setting, to bring some, a few of my favorite characters from Ragamuffin and Crystal Rain into to cause some havoc.
Excellent.
This novel also features another scientific justification for a futuristic zombie plague.
Okay, cool.
We have, I love, submarine movies, the tense moments where you have like, dive, but the sub can't take it. We're too deep.
It's going to collapse.
It's going to collapse. Well, if you're in a Venusian atmosphere and you're in an airship, and if you go too deep, you get the same sort of submarine type movie, bits. And so I'm having fun with chase scenes where airships are trying to dive to crush depths inside of an Venusian atmosphere.
Very cool. Working title for this?
It's called Sly Mongoose.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's the most fun I've had writing a novel yet. So we'll see what that means in terms of the finished product.
Now, Toby, while I'm thinking of it, some of these things you've mentioned, I've read a little bit in the past at your wonderful website, tobiasbuckell.com, and we've been showing that throughout today's show. Tell us a little bit about the website and what people can find there. Opening chapters of different novels, short stories. Your weblog's a lot of fun, and you've featured some interviews we've done in the past on that weblog.
Yeah. Well, the website is, there's always more stuff going on there than I know what to do with. It's very interactive. First of all, the weblog is the critical component, and the weblog has been good to me. We get 1,000 people a day or more kind of swing through. And the weblog is just, I post things that interest me every day. It's not kind of like, this is my life as a writer, love me. It's kind of like, here's an airship, a pedal-powered airship is what I posted the other day. Link to a pedal-powered airship, Just stuff that I think is so cool you have to hear about it, It's the kind of stuff that you used to forward around an email before, until people started to get annoyed and be like, stop emailing me. So now it's like, if you want to see cool crap, come to my website and we'll blog about it. And then the other stuff I do is there's a lot of related content to my fiction. So, the first third of Crystal Rain is available free for you to read as a sampler, because I love reading. It takes me about 10 chapters to fall in love with a book, and so I wanted to replicate that experience online so people could read a chunk of the novel and fall in love with it. Ragamuffin, once it, right away here soon, I'm going to start posting a chapter a day. So that's going to start going up. And we've got some free stories, we've got some free audio fiction online, all sorts of interesting stuff.
Well, I think it's one of the websites I visit daily. There's about 4 or 5 that I go to. Every day I stop in and look, and every once in a while I'll post or say hi. And it's a really great website. You've got video blogs. You've got also links to some other work you're doing, which is really interesting.
Yeah, one of the things I do is freelance blogging, and I work for bloggingstocks.com, which is #1 financial weblog online. It's AOL property. I cover Apple there. I also do some video blogging there, and I write a column about easy-to-use technology. I'm kind of obsessed with technology that actually works. I'm an alpha geek, but I really place a high emphasis on stuff that I can actually functionally integrate into my daily life without too much fuss.
I like that. I visited that site.
So I've been writing a column once a week about things that I think you should look at, and here's the easiest solution to using that. The last column I think I wrote was about easy-to-use GPSs. I kind of looked at a couple of easy-to-use GPS units, And the other thing I do is I hang out at a site called futurismic.com. And the idea behind that site is that we talk about technology that's just over the horizon. Not really far out stuff or not geeky stuff that you're kind of trying to use right now, but stuff that's just
things
about
maybe
to hit.
in 5 years, 2 years.
Stuff you need to know about in 4 or 5 years, exactly. And that site is great, and we're about to have a relaunch of that soon anyway. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on, because that's a really interesting site.
Oh, very cool, and all that can be found at tobiasbuckell.com, which you've seen throughout the show. We've got a couple minutes left. Let's talk about the future, Toby.
Sure. As a
what's
science
coming
fiction
up?
writer, I'd be happy to oblige.
Yeah, what should we be looking for in the next two?
Well, I mean,
years?
you know, the next 2 years, we have the Slime Mongoose will be coming out in 2008, so that's a year off. The other thing is that a graphic novel, a comic book adaptation
With
of
Marvel.
Crystal Rain will be coming out through Marvel Tobial Brothers. Tobial Brothers recently partnered up with Marvel. They're doing a lot of adaptations of some really great science fiction novels by people like Orson Scott Card or Raymond Feist, and little old me.
Yeah, that's going to be amazing, and especially that's going to work so well. It lends itself so well to graphic novel format. Crystal Rain does.
You know, I'm a visual writer, I think, more so than anything else. And one thing I absolutely do adore is comic books as well, because I'm kind of like, you know, the inner 13-year-old is just kind of like jumping up and down like, sweet. And to have something translated into that format is going to be really exciting. I literally cannot wait for them to start on it, you know, and start seeing the results soon here. And that's going to be really exciting.
Okay, Toby, real quick, I was a fan of some of your short stories that you had on your website here about 6-8 months back. Can we look for any short stories anytime soon?
Yes, we can. You know, I've got a new short story coming out in a anthology by Eric Reynolds. It's Space Visions. And it'll feature like classic space art, and with it a custom story. And I wrote a story called Io Robot for that, about a robot that trundles around on Io. That'll be a really cool anthology. Look at, you know, keep my website in mind. I'll definitely link to it when it gets ready. I think that's going to be a great anthology. Also, coming up soon will be the fact that I'm going to have a short story collection come together.
Okay, fantastic.
We're still kind of doing the details behind the scenes there, so I can't give out exact details, but I'm pretty sure that as soon as, you know, maybe this summer, that we'd have a short story collection together for people to buy, which is great because my short stories have been scattered all across lots of different anthologies, you know, web places, some magazines. So I've never been in one consistent place.
So this will bring them all together.
It's going to bring it all together. We're going to, you know, we've been thinking about how to place them and what themes to run and stuff, and it's going to be really fun.
Good. Well, I've really liked your short fiction in the past, so we'll definitely be looking forward to that. But Toby, we wish you continued success.
Thank you.
I'm a fan of yours, and I've gotten to know you and really like you, so I wish you all continued success. Thanks. And folks, when you have any questions about an author, I always recommend, when they've got a great website, go to their website. So visit his website, www.tobiasbuckell.com. You can learn all about his past books, his current book, and everything else. But I really recommend you pick up Ragamuffin. But I'm going to ask you right now to stay tuned for more of Cult Pop. When we come back, we're going to talk here at 2007 Penguicon with another author we absolutely love, Nick Sagan. So stay tuned.
With nerves of steel, with determination and resolve, they go. And the USO will be there until every battle's won and every song is sung, until everyone comes home.
I'm with author Nick Sagan, author of some great sci-fi novels you might have read, Idlewild, Edenborn, and Ever Free. Nick, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thanks for having me.
I read Idlewild and absolutely loved it. One of the best science fiction books out in the past 5 years. It takes you on a roller coaster ride. You don't know sometimes really what's happening, where you're at, what's going on with these characters. It's fabulous. I read about it online, and people were discussing and saying, possibly one of the best science fiction books of the year. Better than The Matrix, what The Matrix wanted to be. What's it like to get this kind of positive feedback on your novels?
It's humbling, honestly. It's a kind of reaction that I dearly love. It's not something I expected. I'm mostly a screenwriter. I'm known for writing for Star Trek and for doing adaptations of other novels. And so I had an idea that was coming to me, and it came kind of as a lark because I wasn't sure what it was. It wasn't coming out as a screenplay. It wasn't coming out as a video game. It was coming out as a book. And I, on an off chance, said, let me try to write this and see what happens out of it. And got to the end of it, thought it might be a thing that only I would enjoy, but people loved it. And we wound up selling it and the trilogy. And Borders and Barnes & Noble both picked it as one of the best books of the year.
They embraced it.
And fans embraced it. And it's just been a wonderful ride. It's the kind of thing where I might have not finished it at one point, and it was just a lesson to speak to follow your heart and do what you want to do, and occasionally really great things will happen out of that.
Okay, now Idlewild in particular, Nick, people might think Idlewild, that's a musical, and no, it's not a musical. That was a fine movie, but a different genre altogether.
Andre 3000 is not in the book.
That's right. Why don't you bring folks up to speed a little bit and give a little general synopsis of Idlewild?
It's a mystery structure. It's sometimes described as like an onion, where you get deeper and deeper to get to the heart of it. And I don't want to give away all of it, but it's typically about a young man who's coming of age, doesn't remember what's happened to him in the past, and starts on a journey to try to figure out who he is, and along the way discovers a much larger mystery about the end of the world.
Okay, and then you had 2 follow-up novels to that, Eden Born and Ever Free.
I have a thing where I have to write novels that start with vowels and are 8 letters long and are in two words with 3 syllables. I'm not sure why.
So if you write a 4th, how's that? What, you got a name for that one already?
I'm going to run out of titles really quick.
The popularity of those books were also quite at Borders, Barnes & Noble, places like that, readily displayed, a lot of great feedback they'd put right there. With the success of both of these, can we expect more sci-fi and things of that from you in the novel, not the TV setting?
I love science fiction. Writing the novels has been fantastic. It's been a little scary because when you're writing a screenplay, you have certain constraints where you know things have to happen by certain times. You write a book, if you want to write for 10 pages about a sunset, you can do that. No one's going to stop you. And that's kind of wonderful and terrifying. You probably should not do 10 pages about a sunset. But I had the freedom to do what I wanted to do and to tell a story that would interest me, as opposed to thinking, what do I need to do to hit like the target demographic that producers would want me to write and all that kind of stuff. I love it, and I love these characters. I love the stories that have been told. The first book is in many ways a sort of self-discovery, focusing on the individual, and then the second one became more about the family, and the third became about society. So at each different level, it's like opening the aperture a little bit wider and wider. And it's been not only has it been a fantastic experience and a wonderful to get the response it's gotten, it's been really beautiful to me as a clarifying experience where you figure out what it is you really believe in the process of doing what you're doing.
Nick, you're a very visual storyteller. When I read Idlewild, I mean, I could see the stuff going on as I'm reading it, just very, very vivid in my mind's eye. I think that these 3 books would be very easily produced into Hollywood films. Have you considered this with your background? Is this something you're looking at?
Well, it's funny because when I first started writing them, I thought, well, I don't know how I'd make these into movies, so I'll write them as books. But now with retrospect, yeah, I can completely see how I'd like to do it. And every so often we get nibbles from production companies saying they'd like to adapt it, and I've been saying no because the goal in my mind is to take a little time and do that myself. But at the same time, there are other competing projects, and I'm in this enviable but difficult position of having to juggle a lot of things at once to try to find time to do the things I really want to do most. And I think that will happen, but it may take a little time.
Okay, Nick, well, people who have any questions in regards to your work can visit your website. Why don't you tell folks at home your website?
It's nicksagan.com, and you can email me directly at contact@nicksagan.com.
Nick, people who may not be familiar with your novels might think, I know Nick's name from somewhere. That's probably from your work on the Star Trek episodes. Tell us about that.
Sure, they probably know me from that, or they recognize the last name as being the son of Carl Sagan. But my Star Trek work, I was very lucky to be able to work on 2 episodes of Star Trek Next Generation. The 7th season of the show, I did an episode called Attached, an episode called Bloodlines. And I was also brought on as a story editor for 5 episodes of Star Trek Voyager. And a very different experience, a lot of fun doing it, learned a lot along the way. And television is kind of a crazy situation because everything costs so much money, and you have to keep feeding the beast effectively because you can't leave the crew and the actors standing around with nothing to do. That'll hemorrhage you money. So it has to train the writers to write very quickly, well and quickly. And sometimes that works really well, and I'm very proud of some of the episodes. Sometimes it doesn't work so well. So you have to sort of try to do the best you can with the time you have.
Now, having done both novels and this, what do you find more rewarding?
Well, it's a trade-off. The novels are more personal. You can tell deeper stories in a way. You can tell stories where instead of having a costume designer put costumes on actors and have them present something for someone to perceive, that work gets done by the reader. So you're really encouraging them to kind of go on a journey with you in a different kind of way. And I think there's something really beautiful about that. I enjoyed writing novels a lot for the freedom, but television has an immediacy to it. When you work on something, you know it's going to actually get out there. You reach more people. So the most successful novel you can write is probably not going to do as well as an average television show that you write, just in terms of reaching the right number of eyeballs.
And also money-wise, I would assume.
The money is much better in TV.
Now, the pressure has to be pressure and kind of being a writer. I'm sure you do it where you think, I've written this and this is perfect. But for TV, no, get rid of this, change this, we've got to make this work in this. How does that work for somebody that's as creative as you are? How do you keep your feelings in check and give them what they want?
Well, being able to write the novels is an outlet so that you don't have to feel that way. Television is collaborative by nature. That's just the way it's going to be. There'll be things you write that'll stay intact. There'll be things that'll be changed drastically, and you'll feel like, oh, I kind of wrote that. But that's the nature of what it is, because there's an executive producer who runs the show, and it's his job to make sure that everything comes out has a consistent vision to his specification. So while it's frustrating, you sometimes have a feeling of like that you're losing things that you worked on really hard. At the same time, there are all these benefits where, like, I've written on scripts that are not mine. I have no credit on. But it's this thing where this scene wasn't working, so they would split up and say, you write this part, you write that part. So I would go and write, some really nice work, and that winds up in that episode. And so it's like a gift as much as anything else. And as long as I have books to turn to where I know that I'm going to be able to do what I want to do with much less interference, then I don't mind. It's sort of what I expect from Hollywood.
Okay, Nick, as we wrap up, what can we look for in your future? More novels, more TV?
A little bit of everything. I'm working with a production company right now on a science fiction piece, hope to get made into a movie eventually. I'm also working on an idea with a friend of mine that we're doing as a comic book and as a game and as a movie, sort of vertically integrating it in every step of the way. It's a bit experimental, but it could be a heck of a lot of fun if that happens.
Okay, before we close up, I wanted to talk with you about the video game, which I think is really neat that I don't know many people that have worked on video games. Tell us about Zork Nemesis.
Well, I've been really lucky in that I've been able to work on a number of different media, and video games are one of them. Zork Nemesis is one of those. I grew up playing the old Infocom text adventures. There's a white mailbox, walk around the house, all that stuff. And I was tapped early on to be writing the story of Zork Nemesis, which is this more Myst-based kind of 3D visual exploration of the great underground empire of Zork. And it was a wild trip. I worked on it for a long time. It was a little strange because I would be working with a producer and me and a graphic designer and a puzzle maker. And we would all be trying to work together to try to figure out like what the best thing should be. And so it got a little crazy because it's almost like you imagine a movie crew together and someone would say, oh, let's go shoot those trees. Those trees are beautiful. And then it's like, but the trees aren't in the story. Well, put them in the story. So you had to sort of find ways to make everything work. But you look at the final product, it's a very dark, powerful, scary piece. It's very true to the other stuff I've written. And so I'm really, really happy for my contributions to it.
Well, Nick, you're definitely a multimedia writer. I've known guys that have done screenplays, talked with people screenplays and books, but not people that have also done video games and everything you've done. So congratulations on your success. Your novels are absolutely fantastic. We absolutely loved Idlewild. I'm going to track this video game down. And for folks at home, I just recommend that they go to your website, nicksagan.com, learn all about his books, future novels, future work. And we thank you so much for being on today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that was Nick Sagan, and earlier today we had an opportunity to talk with Tobias Buckell. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Cult Pop, and we hope you'll come back next week for a new episode.